Let's get to In Focus now. Steve Hilton, host of The Next Revolution. Can we just start with what Paul Morrow just said? All the racial arsonists are topping off their gas cans at this point.
Exactly. That is what is so terrible about this story. There's a human tragedy at the heart of it that we shouldn't forget. And we weren't there. We don't know exactly what happened. We've seen pictures and video, and that will all emerge. We can't make a judgment about all the context, but what we can see is what the left is doing right now to use this to exploit it for their own political partisan advantage, to push their extremism, and that is totally reckless and irresponsible. We heard a comment there that the argument that this person wasn't authorized to use force to that extent. It seems to a lot of people that the ones who are these days authorized to use whatever force they want are the criminals. That's what's happened in our big cities run by these far-left Democrats. And I have to say, Eric Adams seems to be striking the right tone in his remarks, and that's all good. But let's remember what the real story is here. He was elected on a promise to stop the crime and chaos in New York, specifically elected on a promise to stop the crime and chaos on the subway. And yet there it still is. And so we have to remember there is a political responsibility here to create a situation where a city is safe and orderly and people feel safe and secure going out about their daily business. And then you won't have incidents like this.
You know, I was in the elevator on the way to the show moments ago, and something caught my ear from Laura Ingram, who was on the air at the time, just a few minutes ago. And she said there are two options here. Treat the mentally ill, those people in trouble, or they go to jail. Like, you cannot live in a population, Steve, where everybody is on edge based on something they can never predict.
Exactly. And again, Eric Adams made very strong promises. And that's why he won. That's why he actually won in the primary, in the general election in New York, because he was the one that seemed to recognize the desperate need in New York to deal with these problems. And yet, maybe he's trying, but it's not good enough because the situation still doesn't seem to be improving for too many people. And in terms of the mentally ill, it is absolutely right that they need proper treatment. Now, I don't think I would say that the choice is as stark as sending them to jail if they haven't committed a crime, but if they need help, they should get the help that they need. That is a long-term process. They go on and on, the left, about investing in this and investing in that, and healthcare, and taxes seem to go up and up and up. But the services that cities need to look after everyone, including those who are most desperate, never seem to be there. And the actual outcomes seem to be worse.
The idea that AOC and others on the far left are jumping on this particular situation is really a head scratcher, because we've covered it here on The Focus. 27 other people have violently died on the subway system since March of 2020. One op-ed says Jordan Neely matters, but asks, where are progressives when those others were killed? Look, it's a fair question, because we talk about race, but many of those victims were black. I mean, what is it that AOC, why does she suddenly get involved on this one? I know there's an ethics investigation into that dress she wore to the Met a few years ago and how she paid for it or didn't. But is she trying to get some spotlight here? What's the political play?
What it reveals is, in many ways, the defining characteristic of today's far-left extremist Democrats. They are not interested in substance, in the actual outcomes of policy, in what happens in the real world. The only thing that they care about is sending the right message to their activist base, to if you like, the term we used to use was virtue signaling. There's nothing virtuous about that. This is ideology signaling. That's all they care about. The actual consequences of the policies of the people that they support are completely uninteresting to them, and especially the consequences, and this is the most shameful thing, for the very people that AOC and others on the far left, these extremists, say that they care about, the poorest, the most vulnerable, people in minority communities. They're the ones that are hurt the most by these far left policies, but people like AOC, people on the far left, they do not care about actual outcomes. They just care about riling up their activists on Twitter and social media and sending the right ideological message so that they look like the virtuous ones. It's the exact opposite of virtue. It is really disgraceful.
Well, and she's putting a whole lot of toxic words and behaviors into an ecosystem right now that needs to be calm, and that's what the mayor is talking about. We'll cover every inch of the story as it happens. Obviously, the DA right now is at the center of it. What will you do if you've been soft on crime and you're ultra-liberal? Who will you pitch to? How will he do his job? Alvin Bragg. We'll cover that. So, Steve, a viral video has highlighted the nationwide controversy over transgender issues. It shows a transgender student assaulting two girls at a California high school. It was reportedly over an incident in the girls' locker room. One student in the district went after school board members, saying it's about time they step up and protect girls and women. Let's watch that.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and only ladies and gentlemen it is and shall always be. Why are we affirming the mental confusion of this boy and putting the safety of women in jeopardy by allowing mentally confused men to use the women's spaces? What about the true girls like myself who are female down to our DNA? Why don't we ever get a say in whether or not we are comfortable with this? The truth is, we aren't. The majority of us aren't, and yet nothing has been done to protect the safety of these women.
Wow, spoken like a grown-up. The issue front and center in Florida as well. State Democrats there are tearing into a bill, awaiting the governor's signature. We'll get into that in a moment. But first, Steve, your reaction to this situation?
I just think it's incredibly sad because here we have a situation where yet again ideology is triumphing over what should be at the heart of these conversations, which is our humanity. So I take the view that it's a good thing that people can be who they want to be, live how they want to live. That is important. That is about kindness and compassion and treating people with the respect that they deserve and treating them as human beings. At the same time, we have to make sure that everyone feels safe and protected. That word you hear the whole time, feeling safe, that applies to everybody. And I think yet again you see the people in charge, the people who are supposed to be making decisions to keep people safe, are doing the exact opposite in the name of ideology. And as a result of that, you get these emotions that are so high, you get people feeling angry and resentful that they're not being listened to, and that applies on every side of this argument. We just got to lower the temperature and remember our humanity.
Okay, I do want to quickly get to the situation in Florida that's awaiting the governor's signature. The measure would make it a misdemeanor offense to use a bathroom that doesn't align with a person's birth gender. And here it is. The Safety in Private Spaces Act says, quote, females and males should be protected in restrooms and changing facilities for their exclusive use, respective to their sex, in order to maintain public safety, decency, decorum, and privacy. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's ridiculous, frankly, that we're treating this issue. This is exactly the opposite of how we need to go. It's what I was talking about earlier. We need to lower the temperature. We don't have to criminalize this. We need to leave it to people's common sense and decency and kindness and compassion. And I think the politicians are totally reckless in the way that they're exploiting this for partisan reasons. This is a really difficult issue for people to resolve, and the best way you do it is through humanity, not through legislation.
Yeah. Well, look, that young girl and others that I've spoken with, or I should say actress, she's a girl, look, they have a point. Why are women left out of this conversation? Why are young girls using facilities at schools left out of the conversation? Why are young women, like the one who spoke, left out of the conversation when we are the ones that will get caught when whatever they're doing is wrong, if they guess wrong?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Everybody needs to calm down and treat this with kindness and compassion and respect for everyone, and not start yelling at people, and certainly not having the politicians wading into something like this and trying to make political capital out of it. And everyone needs to feel safe. Everyone needs to feel safe and protected, not just those that the ideology favors at any one given time for any one group of politicians and activists.
It's so true. Politician's going to politician, though. Steve Hilton, great to see you. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.